All right, well, welcome everyone and greetings. Thanks for coming back promptly from the coffee break. My name is Ethan Plotkin. I'm a CEO of GDCA. For those of you who may not know us, we used to be GD California many years ago, but we shifted to GDCA with a rebranding about 8 or 9 years ago. It stands for Great Designs Continued Always, and that's what we do. I think Jerry did a really good job telling you what we do. And today, I want to talk about changing strategies as a result of changing times. So a little bit by way of introduction for me, I, for much of the first part of my career, worked for a large consulting firm, Accenture. And I learned a lot about strategy. And what I really learned about strategy was that the strategy has to fit the situation. And as your situation changed, so does your strategy. I remember I was talking to a mentor of mine at Accenture, and I was commenting on the fact that Accenture had changed their strategy like the third time in 6 years. And I remember commenting, Bill, can we not get this strategy right? What's wrong with this picture? And he said, Ethan, no strategy works forever. If it did, Detroit would still be making muscle cars and we would still be living in caves. And I went, okay, Forrest Gump moment. Bill always had a way of explaining things so I could understand them. So what I really learned about strategy was that it's never the same strategy forever. You've got to change. So Jerry mentioned my father, Martin Plotkin, and for those of you who may know him, we're identical twins, virtually. Couple of years apart. I think he's probably aging better than I am. And he's always been a futurist and a visionary. In fact, I remember in the 80s, he kind of called, when the PCs were starting to come on, he called embedded appliances. He called that. And we didn't have the microprocessing power yet, but he said, look, in your toaster and your blender, it's all going to be embedded. And I was like, okay. And I think my main comment was, great, can I borrow the car? All right. So I didn't really get it at the time, but I get it now. And something that he saw in the 80s when he was doing semiconductors, originally with Motorola, and then later with Fairchild Electronics, is he noticed that there was a big gap between commercial life cycles and the life cycles of the embedded capital equipment systems that those products go into. And he called that pretty early. And so as a result, he started GD California. Because he saw this change. And that was his changing times, call for changing strategies moment. So in 30 years, what have we learned at GDCA? Well, when it comes to sustainment, right, we've learned that obsolescence is not the problem, right? Obsolescence management is what we've all been kind of talking about for years, and there is no managing obsolescence, it just is, right? It's like managing gravity. Right? Maybe a parachute could be considered gravity management if you're jumping out of a plane, but I think really it's not obsolescence, that's just real and nothing's going to happen to change that. I think ongoing demand for obsolete products, that's not the problem because there are always going to be some customers who need the product for longer than it makes economic sense to continue supporting it. So that's not the problem. The problem that we've been solving and that we're laser focused on is that board OEMs oftentimes cannot make money supporting old products. Let's think about that for a second. Okay? It looks good on a gross margin basis, but the effort to support these products, a lot of that effort falls below the line in the overhead number. Okay? So that's the problem. And what is it that has created this problem? Well, years ago, when there were a limited number of product lines and a limited number of SKUs, right, board OEMs could support the handful of customers who needed support beyond the time that they would choose to end of life a product. End of life is a strategy that has been real for 30 plus years in our industry. But everything has changed in the last 30 years, making end of life and selective support for a few customers, that doesn't work anymore. That's a strategy that, for most companies, is obsolete. So what's changed? Indeed, everything's changed. Let's talk about the competitive landscape. Years ago, there were not that many companies competing for embedded business. Right? Now, there are a lot of companies, and it's global. Right? So as a result, customers are dear. Everybody wants them, and they don't want to do anything to lose their customers to competitors, right? Because there's more choice than ever before. So as a result, board OEMs will do work that is unprofitable to keep a customer happy, right? Actually, a couple of summers ago, I was working with a board OEM, and they had a customer, not a particularly strategic customer, come back looking for ATCA cards. They just needed about 20 more cards, okay? So as a result, unfortunately, that card was discontinued, and the only couple of techs that knew anything about it were let go the summer before that, okay? But it's such an easy purchase order, right? The customer's ready to place it. So I witnessed over the course of a month while a product manager, a salesperson, and a supply chain guy scrambled around asking me, asking others, how are we going to take this order? And in the end, they decided to go ahead and run it through the CM who used to assemble it, but not test it, right, and not troubleshoot it, but to run it through the CM. The order value, $75K, the CM charging them $72K. Why? Strategic customer, right? My mentor, Bill, who I aforementioned, he said to me one day, Ethan, you know what the definition of a strategic customer is? And I said, what is it? He goes, when someone comes to me with a strategic customer, I know I'm not going to make any money. I went, okay, that's what a strategic opportunity is all about. Indeed. So the competitive landscape, totally different. Innovation, the innovation landscape is different too. Okay? The pressure to innovate has never been more extreme. A lot because of the competition, but a lot because of just the diversity of applications out there. Okay? So when it comes to innovation, right, you want your engineers working on the new stuff. And every hour that they work on old stuff, they're not working on new stuff. I know a director of marketing who has a third of his R&D staff at any given time working on various sustainment problems or production problems to troubleshoot fallout and yield, right? This leaves him, understandably, with a bit of an under-resourced situation on his new products. What does he do? He hires consultants and contractors to work on his new products. I asked him once, why don't you just go ahead and use the consultants and contractors on your old products? And he said, can't do it, because they don't have the tacit knowledge and the pedigree to work on those old products. That's why I need my in-house staff to do that work. Unfortunately, now his contractors are developing that tacit knowledge on his future products. So it's a problem in the future, right? But right now, he's just under pressure to get stuff out the door. So the innovative landscape is different. Life cycles, that's totally different as well, right? So think about it. It's ironic that we are introducing more products faster than ever before. However, it's also interesting that for some customers, the life cycles for the embedded equipment is longer than ever, right? So we're never been faster introducing new products, but we are using them longer than before. I always like to say television, right, has never been better, but it's never been worse, right? You know, so reality TV. So, but Not Naked and Afraid, I love that show. So the gap is huge. And so that life cycle is totally changed the strategy of, okay, we'll do one more last time buy, just a few more years. That's changed because now it's not one more, it's 10, 20 years more. And you'll do it until you kind of break your head against the rocks. Okay. So I think that there's other things, not to mention counterfeits, but I will mention them, right? It used to be that we could just go out for one more buy and go to your favorite broker and get good parts. And the biggest question was whether they were used or not, right? Now it's not that at all anymore. The liability around counterfeits is enormous, right? So, and then, finally, mergers and acquisitions, right? Board OEMs have more of a challenge now than ever before, especially if you are growing by acquiring, right? Because now you have a whole continuous stream of new, old products, right? So, and usually when you're acquiring, you're looking for a particular product set or a particular customer set. And then there's a number of customers and products that kind of come along with the deal that you don't really want to support, but you find, and I see it, it's difficult to extricate yourselves from those lower value products, especially in the face of a strategic customer, one who is really important, who buys your big product offerings, but also your small one too. So you're kind of in for a penny, in for a pound, okay? So those are the things that have changed. And all of that is completely different than it was 30 years ago, yet our industry, in large, generally works in terms of dealing with ongoing demand for discontinued products very much in the same way they did 30 years ago, okay? So what are the old strategies that are now broken or obsolete by this change? I'm going to say that these old strategies don't work anymore en masse. But I will say that not only do they not work, they actually undermine your future. Let's talk about LTBs, right? Last time buy, it strains customer relationships and it doesn't always work, right? And we know it doesn't always work, right? So then there's pre-stocking agreements, right? Let's go ahead and sell service agreements. Those are great, but they're hard to sell and customers don't always buy them, and they still come back. So what do we do when customers come back? Well, minimum order quantities, right? Maybe we can have them buy 10 instead of 1 or 2 or 20. However, the problem with that is they don't guarantee profitability, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because while you're giving your customer an MOQ, your supplier is giving you the MOQ, right? And then so that goes ahead and moves into last time buys, right? I was working, and I'm going to make this brief, working with a board OEM last year, and they had $10 million in obsolete inventory. And they asked me, what's going on with that? And I asked them some questions. And what I learned was that their key criteria for taking orders was basically, do we have the inventory? Right? So they never had all the inventory, always most of it. So every time they needed to get an order, they'd buy just a little bit to top it up, but then they'd buy more than they needed, right? So as a result, it really undermined their inventory write-off. $10 million of obsolete inventory at a 20% net profit, that's $50 million of sales that they would have to sell, right, to make the money back. So these are the old strategies, and the costs, they roll up. Inventory write-off, late or strained timelines for new product introduction, operations crews that are bogged down, walking through sand, trying to do low-volume repairs. Right, these are real current costs of working in old, obsolete ways. So, new strategy, optimization. Shift from looking at things on an order-by-order basis or a customer-by-customer basis and look at your overall portfolio and the profitability of those portfolio. And those costs that I mentioned, those are all nothing to do with gross margin. Those are all below the line, and those costs are kind of peanut buttered across the entire portfolio. So optimization, it's different. And how is it different? Well, it is primarily focused on profitability. It gives you control over profitability, right? It also gives you all the information you need to make decisions to your leadership team to take an order or not. And it gives you some flexibility to change your decision based on your situation, right? Things are changing. Changing times call for changing strategies. And I am an evangelist, and I think that if our industry doesn't acknowledge the times that we live in, then we're kind of doomed to continue suffering this chronic headache of ongoing demand for discontinued products. Thank you.